Planet Reddit. Today's story is...
My husband emptied our daughter's university savings in secret. His own mother sided with me and is punishing him. It all started 3 weeks ago when my husband surprised everyone at his mother's birthday party. He gave her the keys to a house in the suburbs, a property in a very nice area which, due to its location, was probably quite expensive. The news took us all by surprise, especially me, as my husband had never mentioned anything to me about this major purchase. Although I felt quite uncomfortable about not having been consulted, I kept my composure, smiled and joined in the applause. When I later had the opportunity to talk to him about it, he assured me that he had done all the necessary calculations and that this purchase would not affect our financial situation. According to him, that was why he didn't think it was important to mention it to me. However, this didn't make much sense to me. We are not the kind of family that can afford to buy a house just like that. My husband works as a senior software engineer at a technology company, and I run an office supply business together with my parents. While we live comfortably in the middle class, we are definitely not in a position to give away expensive properties as simple birthday gifts. Moved by concern, I decided to investigate a few days later. My first step was to review our joint savings accounts. We have one earmarked for our retirement and another specifically for our daughter's future, including her university studies. On examining the latter, I discovered to my horror that a considerable sum was missing. It didn't take me long to connect the dots. My husband had used the money from our daughter's university fund to buy her mother's house. When I confronted him directly about this, he made no attempt to deny it. In fact, he admitted to having done it and stated that he had absolutely no regrets. I found his defensive attitude particularly revealing, as he was trying to justify that he had done nothing wrong. I pointed out the contradiction in his behavior. If he truly believed he had done nothing wrong, why had he gone to such lengths to hide it from me? He had gone so far as to take my phone while I was sleeping to deactivate all the bank notifications for that specific account and then delete all the records of the transactions that had been sent to me. All this secretive behavior directly contradicted his claim that his actions were justifiable. Even after the announcement at the party, when he had the opportunity to be honest with me, he chose to maintain the lie, assuring me that everything was calculated when in reality he had taken the money intended for our daughter's future. When I presented all these points to him, thinking that I was being reasonable, his reaction was explosive. He reminded me that his salary was significantly higher than mine, emphasizing that his contributions to our daughter's fund, 10% of our respective monthly incomes, were naturally higher. He then accused me of having already done enough for our daughter and for me, that I had no right to make him feel guilty for doing something for his mother for once, and that both our daughter and I were taking advantage of him. His words hurt me deeply. While it is true that he earns more than I do and spends more time at work, I take care of all the housework, cooking and other domestic responsibilities, as well as working in the family business. I consider that my contribution to our life together is just as valuable as his, even though mine cannot be so easily measured in monetary terms. I found it particularly offensive that he suggested that our daughter and I were taking advantage of him, when in fact he was only fulfilling his responsibility as a father by contributing to his daughter's future. That day we had a heated argument that culminated in my decision to move out. Almost 2 weeks have passed and the situation has not improved. We are both in our 40s and our daughter is about to turn 16. We have been together for 20 years, 18 of them married, and although we have had our differences before, this problem has emerged like a bomb that threatens to destroy everything. Her lack of initiative in contacting me after my departure led me to consult a lawyer a few days ago. Her silence led me to believe that our marriage didn't matter enough to her to try to fix things or even apologize. Considering that it was already too late to pretend that everything was fine, 3 days ago I selected a lawyer, had him prepare the necessary documents and filed for divorce yesterday. My parents and my daughter are being incredibly understanding, which I greatly appreciate. However, yesterday I had a moment of vulnerability after returning home. I couldn't hold back the tears and, in a fit of anguish and anger, I called my mother-in-law to tell her the whole truth about the house her son had given her. Throughout the conversation I couldn't stop sobbing. She tried to console me, but in the end I told her that 20 years of our relationship had been lost because of that house. I wasn't blaming her, because I knew she didn't know the truth, but I felt like I needed to know. After telling her everything, I ended the call. This morning, for the first time since I left, my husband called me. This time it was he who was crying. He confessed that he had been hoping that I would eventually return and that he had no idea that I had already filed for divorce. He found out last night after his mother called him minutes after my conversation with her. His mother told him how devastated she had heard me and how I blamed him for everything that had happened. He told me that his mother was very disappointed in him and that she plans to sell the house to pay me back, recognizing that it rightfully belongs to our daughter. In addition, his mother warned him that she would not speak to him again until he spoke to me, apologized and made things right with his daughter and me. This would be his punishment for having ruined everything. Now he is begging me to return, admitting that he made a terrible mistake and that he is deeply sorry. He says he cannot bear to lose the three most important people in his life at the same time. However, I do not feel ready to return to him. Although the divorce causes me a lot of pain, I cannot imagine a better alternative at the moment. I am determined to go ahead with the process because I cannot forget how small and insulted he made me feel. I can handle minor disagreements, but this was a fundamental lack of respect and, despite the pain it causes me, I don't think it would be wise to stop the divorce. Am I wrong not to want to get back together with my husband in these circumstances? Update 1. It's been 2 days since my previous post and I decided to meet with my husband to have a face-to-face conversation. We met this afternoon at a nearby cafe. I deliberately chose a public place to keep the situation under control, as neither of us are the type of people to make a scene in public. As soon as we sat down, he began by saying that he was deeply sorry for everything. He admitted that he had overstepped the mark and regretted his actions. He assured me that he would do whatever was necessary to win me back, that his hurtful words were said in a moment of anger and that he really wanted to contact me, but his pride prevented him from doing so. He confessed that he had been waiting for me to call him, never imagining that I was affected enough to consider divorce. According to him, if he had known the seriousness of the situation, he would not have allowed it to go that far. Although he probably thought he was doing the right thing, for me his words only made the situation worse. I got the impression that he was willing to let me stay angry because he assumed that I would eventually give in and come back. In his mind, it seemed inconceivable that I could leave him for any reason, and it was that excessive confidence that prevented him from contacting me, even though, according to him, he felt bad about the situation. The fact that he needed the divorce news to finally recognize that his actions were wrong confirmed to me that I was making the right decision. I explained that I understood his current regret, but that I had been suffering for 2 weeks without him showing the slightest concern. I told him that it had taken him too long to realize that he wanted me back and that after 20 years together, if this was how little I meant to him, I wasn't sure I wanted to continue the relationship. I told him that I had hoped that our marriage, all the life we had built together, would mean more to him than risking everything for something like this. He himself admitted that he felt bad after I left because of the things he said. It would have cost him nothing to apologize, and perhaps if he had acted quickly, I would have returned and we could have tried to resolve things. But he let the situation escalate and allowed 2 weeks to pass, believing that I would return because I always do. Part of the blame is mine for having allowed him to think that way, since in our previous fights, even in the most serious ones, I was always the first to apologize. It was like torture to be away from him and not talk to him, so it had become a habit of mine to make the first move. But this time, by standing firm, he showed me how little I mean to him. Maybe I could accept not meaning as much to him as he does to me, but what I can't forgive is that he didn't even contact our daughter during these 2 weeks. He needed the threat of losing contact with me, with his daughter and even with his mother to come to his senses. If things have to reach that extreme for him to understand that his actions are wrong, then maybe it's time to reevaluate our relationship. I told him that I'm in my 40s and I've already spent 20 years of my life with him, but if that doesn't make him value me, nothing will. That's why I think divorce is the best option for me now. I explained it to him as kindly as possible because I didn't want to waste energy getting angry, but he still got defensive. He told me that this was just a fight and that I couldn't end our marriage over a disagreement, suggesting that maybe I was the one who didn't value what we had enough. It was clear that he was trying to manipulate me into staying, but I was emotionally exhausted. I told him he was right and that I had already made my decision about the divorce. I explained that I had only met with him to have a proper closure. I didn't want things to end badly after so many years together. That's why I had tried to be as kind as possible and had agreed to meet, but since we had such different opinions on whether this was reason enough to divorce, my decision stood. I told him that, being such different people, we shouldn't waste any more time than we already had. I informed him that in a few days he would receive the papers and asked him to please sign them to end this. When I tried to get up to leave, he started to ask me not to leave and I could see he was about to cry. I told him I didn't want any emotional scenes in the cafe. By that point I was completely exhausted. I told him that I had done my best to explain to him why I couldn't continue with this and that he clearly didn't understand, so I didn't want to waste any more time trying to explain things that he had no interest in understanding. I knew he would just get more defensive and I didn't want to deal with that anymore, so I left. When I got home, he tried to call me several times and sent me messages asking me to call him, but I ended up silencing him. I told my parents and my daughter what had happened, and they comforted me because I was also very affected. I am especially grateful for how my daughter is handling the situation and for her support. She has shown a surprising maturity for a teenager. However, I don't want her to feel that I am turning her father against her, so I told her that she should keep in touch with him and forgive him if he approaches her. Surprisingly, she told me that he hadn't contacted her once since we left. This shocked me because I thought that, since he had contacted me, he would have contacted her too. I hadn't bothered to ask him because I was busy with my own things, so today, when I found out that he had only contacted me without bothering to talk to our daughter, it seemed very strange to me. I can't understand his behavior, and when my daughter told me that now, even if he contacts her, she's not going to respond to him, at least for a while, I couldn't say anything because honestly, I would probably behave the same way in his place if my father did something like that. Anyway, that's the current situation and I feel very confused about him. Update 2. It's been a week since my last post and this morning I finally heard from my husband. He responded to the divorce petition with some minor modifications that don't really concern me. Over the past week, he tried to contact me several times at first, but when he noticed that I wasn't responding, he stopped trying. He finally contacted our daughter, but not to talk to her or ask her how she was. He didn't even apologize, he just sent her a message saying that he wanted to talk to me and that he was sure I had silenced him because he wasn't responding, so she needed to take his call and put me on the phone. My daughter didn't reply and blocked him. Although she had been holding back her emotions for the last few weeks, after that incident she finally came to me and completely broke down. She has always had a normal relationship with her father, although she has always been closer to me, so I can't understand how he can be so insensitive to her. She was already pretty hurt by his comments about us taking advantage of him, then he didn't even bother to contact her for 3 weeks, and when he finally did, it wasn't to talk to her but to get to me. It was inevitable that she would break down at some point, and I'm glad she finally allowed herself to cry because it's better than keeping it all inside. That was almost 3 days ago and since then he hasn't tried to contact either of us. Today I received the revised petition. As there is nothing more to negotiate, the divorce will be finalized 3 months after the waiting period and we will officially end our relationship. It's strange to think about, but it's happening. During and after the divorce, I will continue to live with my parents. As for my daughter, as she is still a minor, we have allowed her to decide where she wants to stay. She has made it very clear to me that she wants to stay with me, but I don't want to get into trouble with her father or make it look like I'm turning her against him, so she has agreed to spend weekends with him. I haven't discussed this arrangement with him yet, but if he wants to maintain a relationship with his daughter, this is what he will have to accept because after everything that has happened, I don't think she wants to spend more time with him than weekends. The strange thing is that he hasn't even asked about her. I know she tries to pretend she doesn't care, as teenagers tend to do, but I know that deep down she is hurt and I can't understand how he doesn't even care knowing that he is hurting our only daughter. As a mother, it is my duty to do what is best for my daughter, so I am going to talk to him about this custody arrangement and have the necessary legal documents drawn up. She is 16, so we can't decide for her. She has a say in what she wants and she has already told me what she wants, so I will proceed with that. Besides her, the other person affected by all this is my mother-in-law, who has been sending me messages regularly asking about both of them and has even visited us a few times. She is in the process of selling the house and as soon as she does, she will pay me back all the money. I am really grateful to her for this because, strictly speaking, she didn't have to do it. She wasn't the one who took the money from our daughter's college fund, that was my husband. She could have chosen to simply ignore the situation and keep the house, but she decided to do the right thing and her support makes me grateful to have a mother-in-law like that. She hasn't even criticized me for my decision to divorce her son. In fact, she told me that if that was what I wanted, I must have thought it through very carefully, and she said that she knows it isn't easy but that she wishes me luck with my decision. I can't imagine another mother-in-law behaving like that in her place, but she has been very dignified throughout this whole affair and I really respect that. I haven't asked her if she has been in touch with my husband, remembering that he had told me that his mother had decided not to speak to him unless I went back to him. I don't know if she is still like that and I don't want to pry, so I haven't asked her. Personally, I don't mind if she keeps in touch with him because he is her only child and she lost her husband a few years ago, so I understand that it is probably not easy for her to live without talking to her son. Besides, it's her decision, so I don't mind if she decides to keep in touch with him and for his sake, I hope she does because he was right. It would be devastating to lose all the important people in your life at once. Although I am very upset with him and his behavior, I cannot deny that I still have a soft spot for him, which is natural after so many years together. So I sincerely hope that he can straighten out his life and, if not with me, at least be able to repair the relationship with his mother and his daughter. Update 3. It's been a couple of days since my last update and, as I mentioned, I contacted my husband to discuss our daughter's living arrangement. I had expected him to mention it first, but as he didn't, I took the initiative. He was thrilled when I called him, but his enthusiasm faded when he realized I was only calling him about this. When I told him that our daughter wanted to spend the week with me and was willing to visit him at the weekends, he said that was fine with him and gave me permission to proceed with the legal paperwork. Then, as an afterthought, he mentioned that because of his emotional situation with me, he had been neglecting his relationship with his daughter and had not realized it until now. He asked me for a favor. He told me that if it was possible, he wanted me to convince our daughter to unblock him so that he could apologize properly, something he hadn't done until now because he was too busy with his own problems. I was glad that, even if it was late, he wanted to try to make things right with her, so I agreed to help. After I hung up, I spoke to my daughter about it. I didn't try to pressure her, I just told her what her father had said and let her decide whether or not she wanted to talk to him, because I think that at her age it's better for her to make her own decisions, especially about her father. The situation is very complicated now and I don't want to pressure her, so she can take her time to decide when or even if she wants to forgive him and proceed as she prefers. Personally, I think this is the best way to handle the situation. With this done, I think this was pretty much the last interaction I needed to have with my future ex-husband, and after this there is nothing more to say or do. Update 4. Hi, a couple of weeks ago the divorce was finally finalized, and as of today I am officially single again. This doesn't mean that I'm going to start dating someone new. I'm going to take my time to process everything first because I'm still trying to assimilate everything that has happened. I am still living with my parents and will probably continue to do so for a while, which is beneficial for the business as we are now all under the same roof. My ex-mother-in-law and I keep in touch. She communicates with us occasionally, and I am glad to know that she and her granddaughter get together frequently. I am pleased to see that they maintain a healthy relationship. As for my ex-husband and I, we haven't spoken since the divorce was finalized, and I plan to keep it that way. My daughter has started to visit him every other weekend and, from what I can see, he is truly sorry for everything that happened. He is trying to make amends, and little by little she is allowing him to apologize and resume his role as a father. It is possible that in the near future they will be able to have a normal relationship again. That is what I hope for despite everything, because it would be the best thing for our daughter and, at the end of the day, that is my main priority, to do what is best for her. I have already received the money from the sale of my ex-mother-in-law's house and I have deposited it back into the funds that are now under my responsibility, as both my ex and I agreed that I should be the one to manage them. Things seem to be more or less stable now, which is positive, and I sincerely hope that the future will be better.